The little white church on Elmwood Lane hummed with life on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Sunlight spilled through the stained glass windows, splashing patches of red and blue across the packed pews. The air carried the sharp scent of lilies and roses, mingling with the low buzz of chatter from friends and neighbors crammed in tight. It was Jake Carter's wedding day, a big deal in this sleepy American suburb. After years of going it alone, raising his kid and patching up his heart, Jake was finally getting hitched. The crowd was a mix of familiar faces, high school pals slapping his back, co-workers from the construction site, even Mrs. Delaney from next door, clutching her purse like it might run off. They'd all turned out to see Jake say I do to Sophia Bennett, the woman who'd blown into town and turned his world upside down. Up front, Jake stood at the altar in a crisp black tux, broad shoulders squared, a shaky grin plastered on his face. He looked good, better than he had in ages, folks murmured. His dark hair was combed back, and his hands tugged at his jacket cuffs, nervous but happy. Beside him, holding the ring pillow, was Lucas's 9-year-old son, a mini version of Jake with the same hazel eyes and unruly curls. Dressed in a pint-sized suit, Lucas should have been beaming, the proud kid at his dad's big moment. But he wasn't. His small hands squeezed the pillow hard enough to turn his knuckles white, and he shifted on his feet, stomach twisting like it had all week. Something wasn't right, he could feel it. A gnawing ache he couldn't shake. The organ kicked in, a slow roll of "Here Comes the Bride," and head swiveled. Sophia stepped through the double doors, a knockout in white lace that clung just right. Her golden hair fell in waves, catching the light like she was glowing, and her blue eyes locked on Jake with a sparkle that made the room sigh. She floated down the aisle, bouquet steady, the picture-perfect bride. Jake's grin stretched wider, his voice a whisper. "She's beautiful." But Lucas barely glanced her way. His eyes darted from his dad to the floor, then back again, restless. Under his breath, he muttered, "I've got to do something. She's hiding something big." The preacher cleared his throat, ready to roll, and the chatter died down. This was it, the moment everyone came for. Sophia took her spot beside Jake, their hands brushing, and the room held its breath. But Lucas' chest tightened with every second. He knew something no one else did, something dark, something that could flip this happy day into a disaster. One question pounded in his head. Could a kid like him stop it all? And what he'd uncovered, what he'd heard and seen, was about to make his dad dial 911 before the vows even hit the air. 2 years ago, Lucas Carter's world shattered on a rainy Tuesday night. He was sprawled on the living room floor, snapping together a Lego spaceship, when the doorbell cut through the quiet. His dad, Jake, shuffled over in his muddy work boots, still gritty from the construction site. 2 cops stood on the porch, hats off, voices low. Lucas peeked from the hallway as they delivered the blow. His mom, Sarah, was gone. A semi-truck had blown a tire on Highway 12, smashing into her old Honda on her way back from the diner. She'd been saving for a family trip to the Grand Canyon. Now she was just a memory. Jake sank onto the couch, a beer dangling from his hand, while Lucas bolted upstairs, burying his face in her sweatshirt. It smelled like coffee and lavender, her smell. From then on, it was just him and Jake, 2 pieces of a broken puzzle holding tight. Jake was a rock big guy, rough hands, quiet heart. He threw himself into work, building bridges and hauling rebar, coming home with dirt under his nails and a grin for Lucas. He didn't talk much about the hurt. When Lucas tried, Jake would just ruffle his hair and say, "We're good, buddy," then lob a football across the scrappy backyard. Lucas got it, his dad wasn't built for big feelings. But Lucas was wired different. He noticed stuff. The mailman's limp, the fridge's hum when it was dying, the twitch in someone's eye when they lied. Losing his mom turned that knack into a laser. He couldn't miss a thing, not anymore. They fell into a routine: school, work, dinners of frozen pizza or greasy takeout. It wasn't pretty, but it was theirs. Then Sophia Bennett crashed in. It was a Saturday at Brewhaven, the downtown coffee spot with chipped mugs and a jukebox that coughed up old tunes. Lucas was kicking his chair, bored, while Jake nursed his black coffee. She slid into their booth, latte in hand, foam swirled into a heart. "Mind if I join?" she asked, voice smooth as butter. Jake blinked, then grinned like a dope. Sure, he said, and Lucas watched his dad turn into a giddy kid right there. Sophia was a stunner blonde hair that caught the light, blue eyes that danced, a smile that could sell ice to a snowman. She said she was a graphic designer, fresh in town after a bad breakup, looking for a clean slate. Jake bought it hook, line, and sinker. Within weeks, she was at their house on Maple Street, cooking spaghetti, filling the place with garlic and chatter. Lucas saw his dad light up, humming off-key, cracking lame jokes, even dancing with a dish towel one night. "She's amazing, right, Lucas?" Jake said, eyes shining. "We're lucky she's here." Lucas nodded, faking a smile. Maybe she was good for them. Maybe this was what happy felt like. But the cracks showed up fast. It started small. When Jake was around, Sophia was all sunshine, asking Lucas about school, ruffling his curls, chuckling at his Jupiter facts. Smart kid, she'd say, winking like they were buddies. But when Jake stepped out work, store, whatever, she flipped. The warmth vanished. Her eyes went cold, her mouth a thin line. One night, Lucas was at the kitchen table doodling a rocket when he knocked over his orange juice. It splashed everywhere, dripping onto the floor. Before he could grab a towel, Sophia was there, her hand clamping his wrist hard enough to sting. "You're a real mess, Lucas," she hissed, low and sharp. "I don't know how your dad puts up with you." He pulled free, heart racing, and mumbled, "Sorry." She turned away like he was nothing. He tried telling Jake. They were in the garage, Jake tinkering with a lawnmower, Lucas handing him tools. "Dad," he said, picking at a grease stain, "Sophia's different when you're not here." She grabbed my arm, said, "I'm a mess." Jake chuckled, wiping his hands. "She's just stressed, buddy. Getting used to us takes time. Give her a chance, okay?" Lucas opened his mouth to argue, but Jake's hopeful look stopped him. "Okay, Dad," he muttered, throat tight. But he wasn't convinced. Something was off, and it stuck like a splinter. Months passed, and Sophia dug in. Her stuff piled up, sketchbooks on the table, a jacket on the couch. Jake proposed one night after dinner, down on one knee with a ring from his sock drawer. Lucas watched from the stairs as Sophia gasped, hugged him, and said yes. The room glowed with their joy, but Lucas felt a chill. He wanted to be happy for his dad. He did, but Sophia's glances his way had a shadow he couldn't ignore. Then came the night that flipped everything. Lucas woke up thirsty past midnight, padding downstairs in his Spider-Man pajamas. Halfway down, he froze. Sophia's voice drifted from the garage, hushed and urgent. "Tony, listen," she said, pacing with her phone. "Time this right, and we're set. He doesn't suspect a thing." Lucas crouched behind the wall, heart slamming. "Tony? The insurance is locked in," she went on. "After the wedding, we staged the accident. 5 million, Tony. No more scraping by." "Accident? 5 million? Keep your head down," she snapped. "Don't screw it up." The call ended, and Lucas bolted back to bed, mind racing under the covers. He didn't sleep. Her words spun: insurance, accident, wedding. Was she targeting his dad? Morning hit, and he dragged himself downstairs bleary-eyed. Jake flipped pancakes, whistling, while Sophia sipped coffee, all smiles. "Rough night, champ?" Jake asked, ruffling his hair. Lucas nodded, dodging her gaze. She grinned at him, sweet as sugar, but he saw the edge in her eyes, a warning. "Yeah," he mumbled. "Couldn't sleep." From then on, Lucas turned hawk-eyed. Had noticed her glued to her laptop all week, locking it fast when he got close, muttering about work stuff. Her phone buzzed constantly, and she'd slip out backyard, garage whispering when she thought he wasn't around. One afternoon with Jake at the hardware store, Lucas caught her in the living room, hunched over that laptop. She didn't hear him creep in. He peeked and saw "Ida life insurance page, 5,000 bold on the screen." She slammed it shut when she spotted him, laughing it off. "Hey, kiddo." "Scared me, just sorting wedding bills." He nodded, backing off, but his gut twisted. Wedding bills didn't list payouts. Later that week, his chance came. Jake was out, Sophia was in the shower, and the laptop sat on the kitchen table. Unlocked for once, she'd stepped away mid-email. Lucas' hands shook as he sat down. Had overheard her on the phone days ago saying, "Tony, September 23rd's the key, like it meant something big. On a hunch, he typed T0923 into the password prompt. It worked. The screen flared to life, and he scrolled fast to mails, photos, an insurance policy with Jake's name. One message to T read, "After the wedding, we stage it. 5 mil plus his savings." His breath caught. This was it proof. That night, Lucas sat on his bed, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars his mom had stuck up when he was 5. "What do I do, Mom?" he whispered. He missed her listening, her knowing. Sophia was bad news, and Jake was blind. Lucas wasn't just a kid anymore. He had to act for his dad, for them. Lucas barely slept after cracking Sophia's laptop, her words searing into his brain like a brand. "After the wedding, we stage it. 5 mil plus his savings." Every time he drifted off, he saw his dad's goofy grin, the one Jake wore when he talked about Sophia, like she was his ticket to happy ever after. Lucas couldn't let her take him down. He'd lost his mom to a random crash. No way was he losing his dad to a schemer with a smile and a password he'd guessed. Tier 923 had unlocked more than a screen, it had unlocked the truth. As the wedding day loomed, Lucas steeled himself. He wasn't sure how, but he'd stopped this, for Jake. The weeks before flew by in a haze of chaos. Jake was a wreck running around town for flowers. A new tie, a cake so tall it looked ready to topple. Head grinned through the stress, saying, "Gotta make it perfect for her, right, Lucas?" Sophia played her role like a champ, all laughs and charm, picking lace and chatting about beach honeymoons. Lucas kept quiet, but his eyes were everywhere. He'd catch her stepping out for hushed calls, her phone buzzing like a beehive. One night, he saw her by the shed, whispering, "Tony, it's locked in. After the wedding, we go fast." He ducked behind the grill, heart thumping, until she hung up. Tony again. That name was a siren now. He tried Jake one more time, over burgers at the kitchen table. "Dad, I heard Sophia on the phone," he said, poking at his fries. "She's talking to some Tony guy about an accident. It's weird." Jake frowned mid-bite, then waved it off. "Lucas, she's juggling a ton with the wedding. Probably just a planner or something. Don't sweat it, okay?" Lucas clenched his fists under the table. "But," Dad Jake's voice sharpened, "enough, buddy. She's good for us. You'll see." Lucas stared at his plate, the burger turning sour. Jake wasn't hearing him. That stung worse than Sophia's cold stares. The clock was ticking. The wedding was days away, and Lucas' proof was still just snippets, phone calls, gut feelings. Then, the night before, he hit gold. Jake was out grabbing his tux, leaving Lucas home with Sophia, who was finalizing details downstairs. She didn't see him slip into the kitchen. Her laptop sat on the table, screen dark but humminged. Left it mid-email to grab a drink. Lucas' hand shook as he sat down. "T-row on my 923, he typed. The password he'd guessed from her call about September 23rd. It worked. He scrolled fast an email to T. "After the wedding, the accident happens. 5 million from the insurance plus his savings. Don't let the kid mess this up." His throat tightened. Photos popped up next to guy with a scar over his eyebrow, cozy with Sophia. Then the policy. Jake's name, $5,000, accidental death. Lucas snapped a pic with his phone, hands trembling. "She's not who you think, Dad," he whispered to the empty room. Sleep didn't come that night. He hid his phone under his pillow, the email glowing in his mind. Morning hit hard, Jake whistling as he shaved, Sophia humming over her makeup bag. Lucas moved like a zombie, pulling on his mini-tux, lacing his shoes. His stomach churned, but his head was clear. Today was do or die. He couldn't let Jake marry her, not with this. In the truck to the church, Jake clapped his shoulder. "Ready to be my best man, champ?" Lucas forced a nod. "Yeah, Dad." Inside, he was screaming. The little church on Elmwood Lane was stuffed when they rolled up. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the pews red and blue. The place buzzed old buddies, co-workers, neighbors, all there for Jake's big day. Lucas stood by his dad at the altar, ring pillow digging into his palms. Jake looked sharp, tugging his cuffs, grinning like a dope. "Nervous?" Lucas asked, voice thin. Jake winked. Just pumped, buddy. Lucas swallowed. He wasn't. The organ swelled. Here comes the bride, rolling out slow and grand. Sophia stepped through the doors, white lace trailing, blonde hair glowing like a halo. The crowd sighed. She was a stunner. Jake's grin stretched ear to ear. She's beautiful, he murmured. Lucas didn't look. His eyes bounced from his dad to the floor, muttering, I've got to do something. She reached the altar, taking Jake's hand, and the preacher kicked off, voice booming over the hush. Lucas' pulse hammered. Every word was a countdown. He shifted, the pillow slipping in his sweaty grip. That email, the photos, the $5 million, they burned in his head. Sophia stood there, angelic, but he saw the lie. The preacher hit the line. If anyone knows any reason these two should not be joined, speak now or forever hold your peace. The room stilled. Lucas' chest locked up. This was it. Wait! His shout ripped through the silence, raw and loud, bouncing off the walls. Head snapped his way. Jake spun, eyes wide. Lucas, what's wrong? Sophia froze, her smile twitching. Lucas sucked in a breath, legs wobbly, but voice firm. Dad, you can't marry her. She's not who you think she is. She's planning to hurt you. The church blew up, gasps, murmurs, a few choked laughs. Jake knelt, grabbing Lucas' shoulders. Buddy, what are you saying? You okay? Lucas shook his head hard. No, Dad, listen. She's been lying. I heard her on the phone with some guy named Tony about an accident after the wedding for insurance money. $5 million. Sophia let out a shaky laugh, stepping in. Jake, honey, he's just nervous. Kids make up wild stuff, right? Lucas dug in. It's not made up. I saw it. He yanked his phone out, fumbling to pull up the photo. Last night, I got into her laptop. There's an email to Tony. It says they'll stage an accident and take everything. He thrust the phone at Jake, screen and blazing with the words. The crowd leaned in, buzzing. Sophia's laugh hitched, higher now. That's ridiculous. Jake, you don't believe this, do you? It's a misunderstanding. Jake took the phone, face draining as he read. After the wedding, the accident happens. $5 million. He looked up, voice low. Sophia, explain this, she faltered, hands fluttering. It's not what it looks like, I swear. Just a silly mix-up with Tony. He's a friend. Lucas cut in, voice cracking. No, Dad, she's lying. I've got pictures sure with Tony, the insurance policy. She's been playing you. The room roared, folks standing, whispering, some craning for a peek. Sophia's cool cracked more. Jake, please, she stammered, eyes darting. Tony's just a buddy. We were joking about money stuff. Wedding stress, you know. Jake's jaw tightened, hurt flashing. A joke? $5 million if I die? That's your punchline? Her mask slipped further, panic seeping in. No, it's not like that. She stopped, breath hitching, then snapped. Fine, she yelled, voice breaking. Yes, I needed money, okay? But I wasn't going to kill you. It was just a plan of backup. The crowd gasped, loud and sharp. Jake staggered back, clutching the phone. You what? He choked out. Lucas grabbed his arm. Dad, she's not who you think. She's been lying from day one. Sophia's eyes blazed, her charm gone. You little, she hissed, lunging at Lucas, but Jake yanked her back. Enough, he roared, pulling out his phone. I'm calling the cops. Stay put. She froze, then twisted free, shoving him hard. He stumbled, and she bolted, white dress billowing as she sprinted down the aisle, knocking over chairs. Stop her, Lucas shouted, but she was out the doors before anyone moved, vanishing into the sunlight. Jake punched 911, voice trembling. My fiancée, she's planning to hurt me for money. She just ran from our wedding. Hurry. The church turned into a madhouse the second Sophia bolted. Jake's 911 call echoed in the stunned silence. My fiancé's planning to hurt me for money. She just ran from our wedding. Hurry! His voice shook, but his grip on Sophia's arm had been iron until she twisted free, shoving him into the altar. Her white dress flared like a ghost as she sprinted down the aisle, knocking over a flower stand, petals scattering like a busted dream. Lucas shouted, Stop her! But the crowd was too shocked to react fast. She plowed through, disappearing out the double doors into the blazing sunlight. Jake stumbled to his feet, phone still pressed to his ear. Yeah, she's gone white dress, blonde hair. You can't miss her. Chaos erupted, guests yelling, some rushing the exits, others crowding closer, phones out like it was a damn crime scene. Mrs. Delaney clutched her pearls, muttering, I knew she was no good. Jake's buddy Mike pushed through, wide-eyed. What the hell, man? Jake didn't answer, just stared at the doors, hurt and fury warring on his face. How could she, he whispered. Lucas stood beside him, chest heaving, the ring pillow kicked aside. She's not who you think, Dad, he said, quieter now. But it cut through the noise. Sirens screamed closer and 2 cop cars screeched into the lot minutes later, lights flashing, gravel flying. Officers stormed in, boots thumping on the hardwood. Mr. Carter, a tall cop with a buzz cut, Officer Hayes called, striding up. Jake nodded, handing over Lucas' phone, the email still glowing. That's me. She took off Sophia Bennett. It's all here. Hayes scanned it, jaw tightening. We'll get units after her. You and the kid need to talk to us now. Before they could move, a shout rang out from the entrance. A guy tall, dark-haired, scar slashing over his left eyebrows, hoved through the crowd, frantic. Sophia, where'd she go? Lucas' gut dropped. He knew that face, Tony, from the laptop photos. Dad. He grabbed Jake's sleeve, pointing. That's him, Tony. He's in on it. Jake's head snapped up, recognition hitting. Officers, he barked. That's the guy from the email. Hayes nodded to his partner, Officer Diaz, who moved like a bullet. Sir, stop, Diaz yelled, a hand on his holster. Tony froze, eyes darting, then spun to run. Diaz was faster, tackling him just outside the doors, slamming him to the ground. You're not going anywhere, Diaz grunted, cuffing him as Tony thrashed and swore. The crowd gaped, some filming, others whispering. Lucas clung to Jake, heart racing. That's him, Dad. I told you. They dragged Tony back inside, wrists zip-tied, face flushed with rage. Hayes turned to Jake and Lucas. Station. Now, this is bigger than a runaway bride. Jake nodded, still reeling, and squeezed Lucas' shoulder. You good, buddy? Lucas managed a shaky, yeah, Dad, let's go. Mike stepped up as they headed out. You'll handle the mess here, man. Get this straight. Jake muttered, thanks, and they climbed into the cop car, the church shrinking in the rear view as sirens faded. The station was all gray walls and harsh lights. Hayes led them to a small room plane, just a table and chairs. Start from the top, he said, notebook ready. Lucas went first, voice steady despite the knots in his stomach. He spilled it, Sophia's cold streak, the wrist grab, the garage call. She said stage the accident and $5 million, talking to Tony. He slid his phone over, email and photos up. Last night I found this. She's been planning it. Jake took over, voice flat. Met her 6 months ago at Brewhaven. She seemed perfect. Pushed for more insurance, said it was for Lucas if I croaked. I bought it. He shook his head. She had me good. Hayes scribbled, then looked up. We've got units hunting her. Let's see what this Tony guy knows. An hour later, they brought Tony in, cuffed to a chair behind one-way glass. Lucas and Jake watched as Hayes leaned in. Talk, Hayes said, tossing the phone with the email on the table. We've got you dead to rights. Tony smirked, scar twitching. You've got nothing on me. That's her mess, not mine. Hayes didn't blink. Email says we stage it. Your face is all over her files. Try again. Tony glared, silent for a beat, then slumped. Fine, he muttered. It's Sophia's show. Her brother, Tony Russo. She roped me in. Lucas blinked. Brother? Jake gripped his chair, knuckles white. Tony kept going, voice bitter. She didn't want you dead, Carter. Plan was a fake crash mess you up bad. Coma, maybe. She'd get power of attorney, cash the insurance, drain your accounts. $5 million plus whatever you've got. Hayes pressed. Why'd she run? Tony snorted. Kids screwed it. She lost it when he opened his mouth. Lucas frowned. But the email said after the wedding, Tony cut in. Yeah, 'cause she flipped. Started falling for you, Jake. Told me last week she might ditch the plan, keep you instead. I said hell now'd invested too much. She double-crossed me, took my cut $500,000 from an old job and ran. Jake's jaw dropped. She loved me? Tony's laugh was harsh. Love? She's a grifter. She loved the game till the kid broke it. Hayes stepped out to them. Her car's ditched 2 miles out empty. Tony's giving us her old spots. But she's got a head start. He handed Lucas' phone back. Good work, kid. Saved your dad a nightmare. Lucas nodded, mind spinning. Sophia loved Jake? Enough to waver but not to stay? He looked at his dad, pale and silent. She's not who you think, Dad, he said softly. Even Tony didn't see her coming. That night, the house was a tomb. Jake sat on the couch, staring at nothing, while Lucas hovered. You okay, Dad? Jake forced a smile. Not yet, buddy. But I will be. Thanks to you. He pulled Lucas into a tight hug. Should have listened sooner. Lucas hugged back, muffled. I just wanted you safe. The cops called later. Sophia was still gone, a shadow in the wind. Tony was locked up, spilling years of scams, fake names, broken marks, vanished cash. He'd cut a deal, trading dirt for less time. Hayes briefed Jake. She's a pro at this. Might never catch her. Jake shrugged. Guess that's it. But it wasn't. Hours after they got home, Jake's phone pinged a voicemail, time-stamped right after she fled. Jake, Sophia's voice crackled. Shaky. I'm sorry. I loved you, messed up as that sounds. I couldn't do it. Tell Lucas he's a hell of a kid. You'll never see me again, but I'll be watching. Click. Jake played it once, face hard, then deleted it. Doesn't change squat, he said. Lucas nodded. She's out. That's enough. The drive back from the station was a quiet punch to the gut. Jake's hands gripped the wheel of their old truck, eyes locked on the road, while Lucas rode shotgun, staring out at the familiar blur of Maple Street. Streetlights flickered over Jake's face tight, worn, like the day had carved years into him. Lucas held his phone, screen off but heavy with the weight of what he'd done. The wedding was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it ripped their world open. And now they were stitching it back together mile by silent mile. As they pulled into the driveway, Jake cut the engine but stayed put. Lucas, he said, voice rough. I'm sorry. I should have heard you out from the start. Lucas turned, caught off guard. Dad, it's fine. You didn't know. Jake shook his head, knuckles white. No, it's not fine. You tried warning me and I shut you down. I put us in the crosshairs because I was too damn blind. His voice cracked, eyes glistening in the dark. Lucas saw the guilt. Jake wasn't just mad at Sophia. He was kicking himself. Lucas put a hand on his dad's arm. I just wanted you safe, Dad. We're here now. That's what matters. They sat there, the silence thick but steady, then climbed out and shuffled inside. The house felt wrong too still, like it was waiting for something that wouldn't come. Sophia's traces were everywhere. A scarf on the couch, a mug on the counter. Jake grabbed a trash bag and started chucking stuff in, moved sharp and pissed. Lucas pitched in, tossing her sketchbook into the pile. Good riddance, Jake muttered, nodding the bag. Lucas nodded. Yeah, she's history. That night, they ordered a pizza extra cheese, pepperoni, loaded. It wasn't fancy, but it was a lifeline. They ate on the couch, some action flick droning on the TV, ignored. Jake glanced at Lucas mid-slice. You're unreal, you know that? 9 years old and you took down a con artist. Lucas grinned, a little sheepish. Had to, Dad. I couldn't let her win. Jake ruffled his hair, a real smile breaking through. You're my hero, kid. The next few weeks were a grind. Officer Hayes called with an update. Sophia's trail had gone cold. Found a burner phone in her car. But she's long gone, he said. We're still looking, though. She'll slip up eventually. Jake hung up, shrugging. Guess she's a ghost now. Tony wasn't so lucky locked up, spilling scams from years back. Fake names, broken lives, cleaned out accounts. He'd cut a deal, trading dirt for less time. Life didn't snap back to normal, it couldn't, but they built something new. Jake swapped the locks, rigged up security cameras, stuck a beware of dog sign in the yard, even though they didn't have one. No risks this time. Lucas noticed Jake hovering, checking in after school, asking if he was okay too often. It wasn't smothering, though it felt solid, like Jake finally saw him. They started therapy with Dr. Ellis, a calm woman in a cozy downtown office. She got Lucas talking about Sophia's cold edge, the fear, the guilt of waiting too long. One session, she leaned forward, voice steady. Trust saved you both, Lucas. You trusted your gut, and Jake trusted you when it counted. Keep that close. Lucas nodded, fiddling with a pen. Yeah, had to protect him. School was a lifeline, too. Lucas dove in naked math tests, built a killer science project, tore up the kickball field. His buddies grilled him about the wedding, eyes wide. You stopped it? That's badass. He'd shrug. Yeah, she was trouble. Had to. They'd laugh, but inside he was just glad it was done. Jake leaned on work, pulling extra shifts, coming home with sawdust and a tired grin. They were mending, slow and steady, their little team tougher than ever. A month later, Jake's site buddy rolled up with an idea. You two need air, he said, leaning on the porch. Camping trip next weekend. Me, you, Lucas, a few guys. No phones, no bullshit, just woods and a fire. Jake hesitated, eyeing Lucas, who lit up. Can we fish, Dad? Mike grinned. Hell yeah, kid. We'll eat what we catch. Jake gave in, seeing Lucas spark. All right, we're on. The trip was a reset. They piled into Mike's truck, drove 2 hours to a lake hugged by pines, and pitched camp under a sky so clear it stung. Lucas fumbled a tent, laughing when it flopped on Mike. They fished all day. Lucas reeling in a trout bigger than his arm, yelling, Look, Dad! Jake whooped, snapping a pick. Nights were fire and stories crackling logs, marshmallows, dumb tales from Jake's teenage days. Lucas hadn't seen his dad laugh that hard in ages, head back, eyes crinkling. It felt like home. Their last night, embers glowing low, Jake pulled Lucas under a blanket by the fire. The lake shimmered, crickets humming. Lucas, Jake said, voice soft, this whole mess with Sophia had taught me something real. Lucas tilted his head. What, Dad? Jake stared at the flames, then at his son. Family's not about who you let in, it's about who's already here. You and me were it. Trust, guts, sticking it out, that's the core. You showed me that when you stood up. Lucas grinned, leaning into Jake's side. We're a team, right? Jake hugged him tight, voice thick. Damn right, buddy, always. No one's breaking us again. Lucas nodded, warm despite the chill. Good, I like it that way. Back home, they hit a new groove, not the old normal, but stronger. Jake eased off the hovering, trusting Lucas to speak up. Lucas thrived, nailed a science fair, joined soccer, cracked jokes over dinner. Sophia's shadow hung out there, still free, still a loose end, but it didn't rattle them. They'd beaten her once. A year after that busted wedding, they grabbed pizza and crashed on the couch, a cop show flickering. Jake looked at Lucas, sprawled with a slice, and smiled. Ever think about that day? Lucas chewed, thoughtful. Yeah. Couldn't let her trick you. Had to stop it. Jake nodded, pride in his eyes. You've got a hell of a compass, kid. Hang on to it. Lucas grinned. Deal, Dad. Jake tossed an arm around him, pulling him close. The house was theirs. No lies, no masks, just them. Sophia's voicemail. You'll never see me again, but it'll be watching, crossed Jake's mind sometimes. But it was noise. Shed lost. They hadn't. Whatever came next, they'd tackle it together, tougher than ever. Lucas and Jake's wild ride teaches us some real stuff. Trust your gut. Lucas sniffed out Sophia's scam early and saved his dad. Be brave. He stood up in a packed church, exposing her lie, proving guts don't need age. Family's about trust, not fake promises. Jake learned he and Lucas are the real deal. Truth wins, even messy. Sophia's gone, her plans toast, and they're still standing. Crazy, right? A kid halting a wedding, spilling a dark secret. Dad dialing 911. What would you do in his shoes? Comment below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, more wild stories coming your way.